Smoke rose from her mouth, from her nose, from places no smoke should ever rise. Her skin had gone dark and cracked, like pork left too long over a fire. Things moved beneath it, living things pushing outward, sinking back, searching for a way out. And when the maesters lowered her into a tub of ice, the things came. Worms with faces, snakes with hands, twisting, slimy, unspeakable things that came bursting from her flesh. She was 13 years old. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Mysteries of the Realm. Episode 4. The Doom of Valyria. The Murder of the Dragonlords. For thousands of years, the Valyrian freehold was the greatest civilization the world had ever known. 40 Dragonlord families ruled from a peninsula of volcanic mountains called the 14 Flames. They forged steel that never dulled. They built roads that never cracked. They bred dragons in the fires of the earth and rode them to war against any nation that dared resist. And beneath those mountains, they fed millions of slaves into mines so hot the rocks could not be touched, where the air stank of brimstone and the tunnels ran with boiling water, where creatures called fireworms burrowed through the stone and burned men alive in the dark. The Valyrians did not care. Gold was worth more than flesh, and the mines were never deep enough. Then, on a single day, every hill for 500 miles split open. The 14 flames erupted at once. Molten rock spewed 1,000 feet into the sky. Lakes boiled. Mountains burst apart. Red clouds rained down dragon glass. The ground cracked, and the sea rushed in, swallowing palaces, temples, and entire cities. Even the dragons in the sky were consumed by the fire. Hundreds of dragons, millions of people. 5,000 years of history, gone in hours. That much is broadly accepted. But the question that has haunted scholars, maesters, and historians for 400 years is not what happened. It is why 14 volcanoes do not erupt at the same time. Not naturally, not in thousands of years of recorded history before that day, and not once in 4 centuries since. Something triggered the doom, and the deeper you investigate, the more it looks like murder. To understand what may have killed Valyria, you first need to understand what was keeping it alive. A handful of maesters, drawing on fragments of the work of Septon Barth, hold a theory that changes everything. Barth was Hand of the King to Jaehaerys I, one of the most brilliant scholars in Westerosi history. His writings were condemned as provocative and unsound by the Citadel. His books were ordered burned by King Baelor the Blessed. But George R.R. Martin himself has confirmed what readers have long suspected. Septon Barth got much of it right. And what Barth believed was this: the Valyrians had used spells to tame the 14 flames for thousands of years. The volcanoes were not dormant. They were imprisoned, held in check by fire mages who performed rituals of blood and sorcery to keep the mountains from erupting. The freehold's insatiable hunger for slaves was not just greed, it was necessity. The spells demanded fuel, human fuel. If Barth was right, then the entire Valyrian civilization was not built on top of volcanoes. It was built on top of a bomb. And the fire mages were the only thing keeping the fuse from lighting. So what happens if someone kills the fire mages? The world of ice and fire puts it plainly. Some believe that the constant conflict among the Dragonlord families led to the assassinations of too many of the mages, who renewed and maintained the rituals that banked the fires of the 14 flames. The text does not name the assassins, but there is only one guild of assassins born in those mines: the Faceless Men. Their origin story is not ancient rumor. The kindly man tells it directly. They first took root in Valyria, among the wretched slaves who toiled in the deep mines beneath the 14 flames. 100 different peoples from 100 different lands, each praying to their own god for the same thing: release. And one man heard their prayers and realized that all those gods were faces of the same god, the god of death, the many-faced god. The first gift was mercy. He killed a slave who could no longer bear the suffering. That was how it began. But then a slave prayed not for his own death, but for his master's. And that prayer was answered too. First they killed slaves out of compassion, then they killed masters out of justice, and then, if Barth's theory holds, they killed the fire mages who kept the volcanoes in check. Not out of contract, out of conviction. The empire built on their suffering would burn in the fires it had stolen from the earth. But the Faceless Men may not have acted alone. Martin revealed something in a recent interview that no major lore channel has fully explored. He said there was another very powerful group in Valyria who were not necessarily the Dragon Riders, the people who practiced blood magic. And there was, in his words, some overlap in the Venn diagram with the Dragon Riders, but not necessarily complete overlap. Two power structures: Dragonlords and blood mages, not the same people, not always allies. 40 Dragonlord families locked in an endless struggle for dominance. No king, no emperor, no central authority. Just ambition, rivalry, and the constant whirl of conflict and deception that the histories describe. Each house maintained its own sorcerers, its own fire mages, and when one house wanted to weaken a rival, the simplest method was not to attack their dragons. It was to kill their mages. The Faceless Men were the weapon, but the Dragonlords may have aimed it. House by house, feud by feud, they hired the deadliest assassins in the world to eliminate each other's sorcerers. None of them understood what they were collectively dismantling. Each assassination was tactical. The cumulative effect was apocalyptic. And by the time the last fire mage fell, there was no one left who could hold back the 14 flames. There is, of course, a more uncomfortable suspect. 12 years before the Doom, a maiden named Daenerys Targaryen had a dream. She saw Valyria consumed by fire. Her father Enar sold every holding, gathered his family, his wealth, and 5 dragons, and sailed to a volcanic rock at the western edge of the freehold called Dragonstone. The other Dragonlord families laughed. They called him Enar the Exile, a minor lord who fled because his daughter had a nightmare. 12 years later, every one of those families was ash. Out of 40 Dragonlord houses, only one survived. The weakest, the one that left, the one that just happened to have a prophet. Dragon dreams are real in this world. Daenerys was not the only Targaryen to see the future, but the timing invites a darker question. 12 years is a long time, long enough to plan, long enough to hire, long enough to put a continent between yourself and the consequences. Did the Targaryens foresee the doom, or did they light the match? Some have noted that the Targaryens later maintained a warm relationship with Braavos, the city founded by escaped Valyrian slaves, the city where the Faceless Men made their home. Others point to the Valyrian steel sword Brightroar, sold to House Lannister for a fortune that could have raised an army. Gold enough, perhaps, to hire the most expensive assassins in the world. The evidence is circumstantial. The Targaryens lost 4 of their 5 dragons after the move. They sat on Dragonstone for a full century before conquering Westeros. These are not the hallmarks of master conspirators, but the question lingers. It always will. Now, remember the girl from the beginning. Her name was Aerea Targaryen. She was a princess, barely 13, trapped on Dragonstone with a mother who would not let her leave. One morning, she climbed onto the back of Balerion the Black Dread, the largest and oldest dragon alive, the last living creature born in Valyria before the Doom. She did not choose where they went. Balerion did. He flew home. They were gone for more than a year. When the dragon returned to King's Landing, he bore a wound 9 feet long down his left side, still bleeding hot and smoking. Something in the ruins of Valyria had wounded the most fearsome creature in the history of the world. Aerea was barely alive. Septon Barth himself attended her, and what he recorded in his private papers was so terrible that the official account was sealed, and a lie was told to the realm. The princess died of a fever. The truth was worse than any fever. Her skin was boiling. Things moved beneath it, living things, pressing outward, sinking back. When they placed her in ice, the creatures erupted from her body. Barth described them as worms with faces, snakes with hands, creatures of heat and fire that shrieked and writhed and died in the cold water. Some were no bigger than a finger. One was as long as his arm, and the sounds they made. Aerea died screaming. Her eyes had cooked in her skull. Barth wrote that she whispered things to him before she died, and then wrote, "I pray that I shall soon forget some of the things she whispered." He never recorded what she said. This matters for our investigation because it proves something crucial. The Doom did not simply destroy Valyria. It unleashed something. The ruins are not empty. 400 years after the cataclysm, the sea still boils, the mountains still smoke, and every expedition that has entered has vanished. A Lannister king sailed there with a fleet. Gone. His descendant, Geryon, sailed there seeking the family sword. Gone. Armies, explorers, treasure hunters, all gone. Balerion is the only creature known to have gone to Valyria and returned, and he came back wounded and broken. The Valyrians practiced blood magic. They twisted the flesh of beasts and men to fashion monstrous and unnatural chimeras. Barth believed they created dragons themselves, crossing fireworms with wyverns through sorcery that should never have been attempted. Those experiments did not die with their creators. They are still alive, still breeding, still hungry. The Doom did not end Valyria's magic. It set it free. And there is one more thread that refuses to resolve. The Faceless Men, if they caused the Doom, did not stop after Valyria fell. There is strong evidence that a Faceless Man assassinated King Balon Greyjoy, paid for with a dragon egg. There is stronger evidence that a Faceless Man has infiltrated the Citadel in Old Town, possibly seeking a book called The Death of Dragons. 400 years after the Doom, the organization born in the slave mines is still hunting dragons, still hunting the knowledge that made Valyria powerful. If the Faceless Men murdered Valyria, it was not a single act of vengeance. It was the beginning of a war that has never ended, a war against Dragonfire itself. So what do I believe? I believe no single hand lit the 14 flames. I believe the Doom was a reckoning that built over centuries, a cascade of failures that no one saw coming because no one was looking at the whole picture. The Dragonlords weakened themselves. Their feuding killed the very mages keeping them alive. The Faceless Men, born from the deepest suffering the Empire could inflict, delivered the killing blows. The fire mages fell one by one, and the volcanoes that had been imprisoned by sorcery for thousands of years finally broke free. But what haunts me most is what Aerea found inside the ruins, because it tells us the Doom was not just punishment for slavery. or the consequence of political murder, or the failure of ancient spells. It was the moment an empire's sins came alive. The Valyrians twisted flesh with blood magic. They created dragons from things that should never have been combined. They fed millions of human beings into the fires to fuel their sorcery. And when the sorcerers died and the spells collapsed, every horror they had ever created was set loose. The Doom of Valyria was not a natural disaster. It was not even a murder. It was the world answering back. So tell me this, what murdered Valyria? The slaves, the Dragonlords, or the mountain itself? Write it in the comments. I read every theory. And if you want to be here when we unravel the next mystery, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter.